Hey, good to see you again, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Gun on One. It is powered by the Inside the Burst Network. I'm Derrick Gunn. And of course, leading into the Eagles' regular season finale after blowing the doors off the Dallas Cowboys is the great debate. Should he or shouldn't he? Meaning, should Saquon Barkley go for the Eric Dickerson record of 2,105 yards, or should the Eagles proceed with caution and rest not just him, but the entire starting unit on offense and get ready for the playoff game to come? I'm bringing in somebody who can give me a definitive answer one way or the other, or maybe he's on the fence. I don't know, but you know him, you love him. He's the legendary voice of your Philadelphia Eagles, the one and only good friend of mine, Merrill Reese. Merrill, how you been, my brother?
I'm well, Derrick, and it's good to see you.
Likewise. So this is going to be a week-long debate, and I'm sure you've already been asked about this. Saquon Barkley, 101 yards away from eclipsing a 40-year-old record set by the one and only Eric Dickerson. Should he play on Sunday against the Giants in a meaningless game? Should the entire offensive unit play in that game, or should they sit them and rest for the upcoming playoff game the following week? What say you, Mr. Reese?
I'm not on the fence. The answer resounding no.
Oh, whoa.
Starters sit. And I think that's a decision they probably made a month ago. I probably think that Nick and Howie got together and looked at the different scenarios and what could be and what couldn't be. And if, of course, the game meant something, even for a first seed, then you're talking about a different story. But they're stuck with the second seed. Look at it this way, Derek. When the season ended disappointingly last year, after the dust cleared and they sat down, everything they did was predicated with one thing in mind, winning a Super Bowl. Every decision they made, they chose the coordinators they felt would have the best chance of getting that team in that direction, and did a good job there with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. They chose the players in free agency, and they did a great job there, starting, of course, with Saquon Barkley. I mean, everybody wakes up, they should wake up in Philadelphia every day with the words, "Thank you, Giants." And everything they did in the draft, and they did brilliantly in the draft, especially with the top two that have been starters, contributors every single week, with, of course, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Every single thing they did was predicated on getting to the Super Bowl. So here we are with a relatively healthy team and stuck in the second seed, which is fine. Nothing they could do to win would mean anything other than, of course, the record. The record is not the goal. He already eclipsed the 2,000-yard mark. That's prestige. He's one of just 9 players to ever rush for 2,000 yards in a season. So if he achieved that, if he gained another 101 yards and was the record holder, it's nice, but it'll probably last a couple of years, and then they'll put in an 18th game and somebody else will break it. And it's not that kind of record like the 60 home run record that stood for so long with Babe Ruth, or Will Chamberlain's 100-point game in the NBA. Those are different types of things. This is a nice record, but it's not one people talk about every day. But aside from that, the main goal is to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. If they went along with this saying, we're going to try to get that record this week, and lost one player, what if they lost Lane Johnson? What if they lost Jordan Mailata? What if they lost Saquon Barkley, who has an injury past with the Giants? What if they lost? They'd have to put those wide receivers out there, because they've got to, if you're going for the record, they've got to take some attention away from the running game. Otherwise, the Giants just stack the box and hit him on every play. There's nothing to gain. There's nothing to gain. Last year, they tried on that last game to move up in a seed. And not only that last game against the Giants, that team had been playing so poorly that they needed one game to put their offense together and show what they could do, and their defense for that matter. And what happened? Number one, they played miserably. And who did they lose? They lost A.J. Brown. And also, I might add that Jalen Hurts dislocated a finger. and had problems in the playoff game. So there's no reasonable way that they can put them out there and go for the record. Forget it. The only thing that counts is the Super Bowl.
But Merrill, we're on the cusp of history, a record that has stood for 40 years. I don't disagree with you. Once the league adds an 18th game, it makes it a little bit easier for future running backs to eclipse the record itself. But this organization, this offensive line could honestly have a chance to say at one moment in time, I got the block for the all-time single-season rushing leader. The organization could say, at one time, we had the all-time single-season rushing leader right here in our backyard. Don't you think there's a little bit of 1-2 there?
No. The offensive line would probably come out publicly and say, yeah, let's go get it. You know what, Derek, when was the bye? Do you know when the bye was? The bye was the first week of October.
Yeah.
This team has played 12 games. Let me tell you something. They're banged up. These offensive linemen are banged up. Saquon Barkley, look at all of the carries. He can't be feeling physically well. He can't be. You want to put Jalen Hurts out there again? He's coming off of a concussion. It makes no sense. And as far as that record is concerned, who cares? It's not that big a deal. Again, we're not talking about a baseball pitcher winning 30 games and saying, well, maybe you are.
Yeah.
What do you know, for example, who ever won the most games in a season as a pitcher? Was it Denny McLain? Whoever it has, maybe it's 35 games. If a baseball pitcher won 30 games, that'd be the same thing. Here, I don't even know who won the most ever. Those things get forgotten. Yeah. They really did. Before all this stuff about Eric Dickerson, I thought maybe it was Terrell Davis, or it could have been Adrian Peterson, but and then I saw in all the write-ups that it's Eric Dickerson's record, but that's not something to puff your chest out about. There's only one thing. You know what the Eagle fans remember to this day? They remember February 4th, 2018. That's what they remember.
Yeah.
February 4th, 2018. They remember, I think it was December 26th, the older fans, 1960, when the Eagles won the world championship. They don't care about all of this other stuff.
Merrill, are you surprised that after 345 carries, Saquon still looks fresh? I mean, we know the aches and pains are piling up, and 345 carries is a lot of carries for any running back through 16 games in a season. But this guy looks like he could go another 5 or 6 games. Are you surprised at how fresh he still looks?
Well, looking and being fresh are two different things.
Yeah.
And you said it. He's been banged up. He's bruised. He's got aches and pains. But he's tough. He hasn't had anything big happen. There hasn't been anything torn or broken or anything like that. Knock on wood. But believe me, he could use a full bye week in effect. He could use this week off to regenerate and be ready to be at his best going into the playoffs. It's that important.
All right. Now, at some point this week, the Eagles are going to make a decision on whether or not the regulars will play or not.
Derek,
how shocked would you be if they say that Saquon is going for that record?
Derek, you said at some point this week the Eagles are going to make a decision.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that decision was made a month ago.
Okay.
I'll tell you, if you ask the Eagles going into the season, if the last game of the season means nothing and there's a record on the line, do you go for the record? Maybe you go for the record, all right? Maybe you go for the record if Saquon Barkley needs 25 yards. 25, go out there, play a couple series. But not when he needs 101 yards to break the record, which could take at least a half, maybe 3/4. You don't want that. This is not a decision. They're not meeting right now about this decision. In my opinion, this decision was made a long time ago. And what the decision was, we will do everything possible to put us in the best position to win a Super Bowl. That's the decision.
Okay, so if the regulars sit out Sunday against the Giants, that means Jalen Hurts will have missed 3 games. Do you worry about rust going into a first-round playoff game where everything's on the line?
No, not with a veteran. Not with a veteran who's played every other game up until the Washington game where he got hurt with 9 minutes to go in the first quarter. Rust, he can take care of the rust in practice next week. He can throw the ball to his receivers. He'll have Dallas Goedert back. No, there's no rust with a veteran like Jalen Hurts. There might be rust going into a season because they don't play at all in the 3 preseason games.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing with the regulars, but not these guys. I mean, he still played 15 games.
Merrill, what has impressed you most about this team this season?
A lot of things, Derek, really. The fact that this defense has really been amazing. I mean, what do they average? They give up about 14 points a game. Jim Johnson, the great defensive coordinator, once told me that if you can hold teams to 17 points a game, you have a chance to win 90% of your games. 90% of your games. So this team is better than that. This is one of the best defensive teams they've ever had.
You look at how this team was constructed, and the Eagles have the youngest starting 11 on defense in the entire National Football League. Are you surprised at how dominant they have been when you consider how young they are across the board on defense?
No. And the reason I say that is because these are great players. There's enormous talent there. I mean, you talk about a great player.
Yeah.
Jalen Carter is as good a guy as, I mean, he's amazing. He's being compared with the great Eagles of all time. He's being compared with people like Jerome Brown. I mean, Reggie White. I'm not saying he's Reggie White, but he's being compared with the great ones. He really is. And you look at the talent on this team. I mean, they brought in a guy by the name of Zach Vaughn.
Yep.
They thought he'd be a pretty good free agent for, a little spot duty here and there and for special teams. My goodness, nobody has played inside linebacker better than he has.
That's right. I love the fact also that Nakobe Dean has silenced a lot of critics. Of course, he missed a lot of 2023 with injuries. A lot of people felt he's too small to play on the inside. Man, has he cranked it up this year. He's been impressive. He's been very similar to that dog that used to play down in Georgia, hasn't he?
He has been. There's another reason. He probably won't be ready to play this week. He had an abdominal injury.
Yeah.
He'll be ready in 2 weeks. So why play him? Why worry about that? He'll be out this week. So you're going to give guys like Jeremiah Trotter Jr. an opportunity to go in there. You're going to take a great young player like Tristan McCollum and another great young safety, Sidney Brown, and give them work in case they're needed in the playoffs.
You look at Quinyon Mitchell. All the years you've been calling Eagles games, who does he remind you of as a guy who's considered already a shutdown corner so early in his career? Is there another former Eagle that he reminds you of?
Well, I guess Darrell Revis wasn't an Eagle. Remember when they used to call it Revis Island?
That's right, yeah.
But that's what he reminds me of, that kind of corner. He's that good. I mean, the Eagles have had some great corners over the years. Bobby Taylor was one. Troy Vincent was one. Of course, Lito was a great cover corner. There's no doubt about that. When you talk about Lito Shepherd, he maybe I would say Lito Shepherd, except that he's bigger and longer than Lito Shepherd.
Give me some insight on the man who orchestrates this defense and Vic Fangio. I know you've had time to spend with him, to get to know him throughout the course of this season. Give me your impressions of him as a coordinator and as an evaluator of talent.
I can't even give you my impressions of him as a golfer.
Okay.
He's a wonderful golfer. We played together this summer. I had him out as a guest, and he's a wonderful, wonderful golfer. But he's an honest guy. He's old enough to not care what anybody thinks. And he gets up to the press conference and you ask him about a player and he said, yeah, he played pretty well, but then he tends to get sloppy. I'm
Uh-huh.
not giving names. He'll come out and tell you that. And on the other hand, he doesn't care what anyone thinks during the preseason. Going into this season, a lot of people were affixing that B word on Nolan Smith because he was still a first-round draft choice for the end of the first round, and they were about to say he's a bust. And they asked Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio said, "No, he's a good player. He's getting better every day. He's getting better every day." Well, guess what? He showed faith in Nolan Smith, and now Nolan Smith is an impact player. He has a sack every game.
Is this one of the deepest defensive teams that you've ever been around in terms of versatility and talent?
Yeah, I think so. And again, you talk about age of this whole team. On the offense, they only have one player over 30, and he's a great player, still at the top of his game, Lane Johnson. And on the defense, they only have one player over 30, and that's Darius Slay.
Yeah.
And he's having the best season I've seen him have as an Eagle. That's how young the
Your impressions of Calcaterra, who's got a lot of opportunities to play with Dallas Goedert being out and being injured.
He's a decent blocker.
Yeah.
He's a very good pass catcher. Made a great catch last week. Got a pass from Kenny Pickett that came at a very big time. But he's a good football player. But this week they're eligible to get Dallas Goedert back. He comes off IR.
Yeah. But you're not putting Dallas out there against the Giants, are you?
No, I'm not. Comes to the coaches and say, look, I haven't played now in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
I go out there for a series or so just to get my sea legs back.
Hey, going back to this past Sunday, how enjoyable was it for you to sit up in the booth with Mike Quick and call that beatdown of the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, number one, it's always enjoyable for me to get up there in the booth and sit down next to Mike Quick. Number two, it's always exciting to me to call a win over the Dallas Cowboys because I grew up and I started broadcasting in an era where every year the Dallas Cowboys beat the Eagles, it seems. And they didn't just beat them, they battered them. And here you go lately. And last year, the Dallas Cowboys, remember, won the division.
Yep.
It's really good to see Dallas down. And it was a fun game to call. Plus, it was a great game tracking Saquon Barkley's 2,000 yards. See, to me, tracking that 2,000 yards was as big and exciting as tracking the Dickerson record.
When Saquon got close to the 2,000 yards, did the wheels start spinning in Merrill Reese's heads in terms of how do I want to call this? How do I want to give it a signature? Or did you prepare for that before the game even started?
No. The only thing I knew was that he had a good chance to get it. And I knew that when he got within 50 yards of it, I was going to start coming down. So he'd pick up 5 yards and I'd go, he's got 45 yards to go. And he'd pick up 15 and he's got 30 yards to go. And we called it down and really gave it the drama and the excitement that it deserved. And when he got it, I looked over at my statistician, Terry Small, and he had to do the arithmetic. So he's down to the 35-yard line. And let's see. And Terry gave me a thumbs up. I said, he has just hit the 2,000-yard mark, the 9th player in NFL history. And, we have big celebration.
So none of that was prepared. No, you just wing it.
Derek, I prepared 2 things.
Okay.
I prepare the opening to every game. I write down a few sentences so that I don't come on the air and go, for every game. Maybe 10 minutes before I go on the air. So I can come on and I tell Mike what I'm going to come to him with. And what I came to him with this week was, Mike, for the second week in a row, it's the same lead-in. The Eagles win, and they clinch the NFC East in the 2nd seed. So that was, we do that. That's what I do. And I write the closing so I can read the credits and I can tell you where they're playing next year and promo the post-game show. Everything else is off the cuff. And as a matter of fact, back in 2018, February 4th, Paul Domowitch of the Inquirer Daily News did a column on me. And one of the questions he asked me was, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, do you know what you're going to say? Will you write something down because those words are going to be for posterity? And I said, no. I said, because you know what? I want it to come from my heart. And what I thought about was all the years that I would go on the morning show and Angelo Catoli would say to me, Merrill, I want them to win the Super Bowl for you, for all the years you've done the games. And I said, no, it's not for me. I said, because I've had miracles of the Meadowlands, 2 of them to describe. I've had great games. Mike Quick's 99-yard touchdown. I've had so many great thrills over the years. But the fans, these fans, some of them take second mortgages so they can buy tickets.
Yeah.
And some of them spend their last dollars to get their kids' Eagles jerseys for Christmas. These fans go out there in sleet and snow and rain and whatever. I sit comfortably. Well, it's cold also because we have the windows open. But I sit comfortably with the best seats in the house at Lincoln Financial Field and call a game sitting next to one of my close personal friends in Mike Quick. And so when it happened, I was scared to death before the last pass. You know why? Yeah. Because I was sitting in a corner of the end zone at that awful press box in Minneapolis, where I knew that pass was going to come down 110 yards away from where I was seated. And there's no real-time monitor to follow it. I didn't think Brady could get it there because he's not Aaron Rodgers, or the way Aaron Rodgers used to throw the Hail Marys. But I was scared to death because I didn't want to be known as the broadcaster who blew the end of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I went back, and they said he stumbles around, he lets it go, and you know what? At that moment, I don't know how, I don't know why, but the whole thing slowed down. And it seemed like I was watching one of these NFL films. And I said, and the passes, and I could see Rodney McLeod jump up and hit the ground, incomplete. And I looked up at the clock and saw zeros, and the game was over. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. And then I said, Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin. And that's just what came out. Same thing with the 2,000 yards. You let it come out.
Hey, career-wise, is there one favorite call that you've had in a game? One favorite call?
One favorite game, and that was the one I just described. That was really of course. I mean, I thought that was pretty good. I think my favorite moments, other than that, my favorite moment was December 19th, 2010, when the Eagles came back from oblivion and beat the Giants on the last play of the game. I mean, they were down 23-3 or something at the half at the Meadowlands, and I said that the score is the Giants 23 and the Eagles are still at the hotel. And then they battled their way back, and I saw what to this day I still believe was the greatest 30 minutes of quarterbacking I have ever seen, engineered by Michael Vick. And the first pass was to Brent Selleck over the middle for a 64-yard catch-run touchdown. Then there was the onside kick by David Akers, recovered by Riley Cooper. Then they came down again, and there was a pass to Jeremy Maclin for a touchdown. Then there was, again, the Michael Vick draw up the middle. And finally, there was a pass into the corner of the end zone inside the left pylon to Jeremy Maclin, and it was tied after the extra point. And Giant Stadium was so quiet you could hear the pin drop. Then, of course, Matt Dodge went to punt, and Mike Quick said, you know, he's not going to punt it to Deshaun Jackson. There's no way. But he did. And Deshaun muffed it, and he reached down to pick it up, and the Jason Avant hit somebody, and the Red Sea parted, and then Deshaun goes to the 1-yard line, and I said, I don't care if he jumps, dances, spins, he's got to get into the end zone, and he did. And watch the tape of that. There's a Giant with an angle on him while he's dancing around. I watch that every time. I'm scared that they're going to tackle him this time. But It was great. That was a great moment. Great moment.
Nick Sirianni has had a winning season every year he's been here with the Philadelphia Eagles, took this team to a Super Bowl in his second year, in a prime position possibly to do it again this season. I mean, he's got to get through some hellacious competition when you're looking at Detroit, Minnesota, possibly Green Bay, even Tampa Bay has always been a thorn in the Eagles' side. There's very few coaches historically that can say their first 4 seasons as an NFL head coach have been winning seasons. And yet, there's a lot of indifference towards Nick Sirianni from the fan base and the media alike. Do you think he gets a fair shake in this town? I mean, we understand he's passionate about what he does, sometimes a little bit too exuberant, but do you think he gets a fair shake in this town?
What's a fair shake? I mean, has there ever been didn't feel the heat? I mean, they might not have felt the heat, but that didn't go under intense criticism. Derek, you disappeared. Oh, that you're back.
Yeah.
We have kind of frozen.
Difficulties. Yeah. You're a little frozen as well. Are you still there?
I'm still here, but you're frozen.
Okay, what about now?
You're still frozen.
Really? I can hear you.
And now you're okay.
Okay. So do you think Sirianni gets a fair shake in this town?
I think he's beginning to. But I think these fans are so passionate and they are so critical that they are tough on everybody. Listen, they were very tough on Andy Reid early when he came in.
Yeah.
And then he won them over and he got to those 4 NFC championship games, never won a Super Bowl. And then late in his career, there were a lot of people ready for Andy Reid to depart. And those last couple of years were brutal with Andy Reid. And every coach here is under a microscope, every one of them. And that's because they love this team so much. So were they fair to Nick Sirianni? Just tough on the head coach. And now they look at his record, and he's got the best winning percentage of any coach in the league. He's taken them to the playoffs all 4 years, and he's starting to win them over because he is kind of refreshing. Doesn't say a lot, doesn't give you a lot of information.
Right.
At his press conferences, he'll say, I can't talk about that because of competitive advantage. But you know what? He's a very, very, very good coach, and the players love him. And that's it's more important that the players love him and respect him than the fans love him. Now, there were things that annoyed the fans when Nick was a little emotional and would get into it with the fans and stuff.
Yeah.
But he's trying to cut that out. He talks about the fact that in 4 years you grow, and he grows, and he knows that he can't show that kind of emotion, that he's got to cut a little of that stuff out, and I think he has.
Don't you think he's brought some of that on himself, though, with his passion, with his emotion, in terms of people who are a little standoffish about him?
Yeah, a little bit. And he would admit that. He would admit that. He would tell you, I'm too hot-headed, and I've got to grow up. He said that. He talked about yesterday. He feels he's grown. He's grown as a coach, and over the years. So yes, a little bit of that. But I think they're starting to like him more and more.
You know what? A good friend of both of ours, Big Dom, basically is like his protector out there. Did you ever think in your lifetime a head of security would get as much national notoriety as Big Dom has gotten over the last couple of seasons? It seems like every time you turn around, cameras are taking a shot of Big Dom on the sidelines. He's in the news for breaking up a fight. He's in the news for trying to corral Nick Sirianni. And all the time I've covered this game, I've never seen anything like it, Merrill.
And you know what? He's not really an attention seeker.
No.
He's seen guys in that job who tried to get in front of the camera. You know that all the time, but not Big Dom. He would be just as pleased if he was never noticed again.
Yep.
But when you're 6'5" and probably the size of Jalen Carter, it's tough to hide.
How closely will you be watching the Detroit-Minnesota game come Sunday night? I mean, there's no bearing on where the Eagles are right now, but you talk about 2-14-2 teams from the same division battling for that number 1 seed. How closely will you watch that game?
Every play.
I
I have to tell you something. I'm just I just love football.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
tonight at 7:30, my TV will be tuned to Penn State, Boise State.
Yeah.
I mean, I on Christmas Day, I watched both of those terrible games
Yep.
from beginning to end. I just love football. So, how closely will I be watching it? I'll be watching it not so much to learn the players, because I pretty much know the players. And
Yeah.
if the Eagles get to play either one of them, I will do my preparation, extensive preparation for every game. But I will watch it as a fan, because they're the two teams with something. The weekend really is kind of yucky, because very few of the games really mean anything.
Yep.
I mean, what does the Eagles game mean? And nothing.
No.
They're stuck in the second spot. And the only thing, the Giants have already blown their draft pick by winning last week.
Yeah.
They ended their 10-game losing streak, and it only hurt them in their draft position. They may not get the quarterback that they want. But other than that, the big game is Minnesota at Detroit.
Yeah.
And I will really enjoy it, regardless of who wins. The only reason I'd like Detroit to win is because ultimately I'd rather go to Detroit than Minnesota, because of that horrible seat I have in Minnesota.
I was going to ask you, which team do you think would give the Eagles more problems, Detroit or Minnesota? Sam Darnold, you talk about a reclamation project. Sam Darnold has been playing out of his mind when so many people called him a bust when he was with the Jets.
People are too critical, too fast of quarterback. I mean, look, Los Angeles, the Rams gave up Jared Goff for an older Matthew Stafford, but although Stafford was the MVP of the Super Bowl for them, but basically, it's not only Sam Darnold. How about Baker Mayfield?
Yeah. Oh my goodness,
he's been a great quarterback for them. That's his fourth team. This is Darnold's fourth team, and then there's a big question: what are the Vikings going to do? Because they have J.J. McCarthy, who they drafted in the first round.
Yeah.
And Darnold's a free agent. So there's all kinds of things that can happen. But he's done a great job. But Goff has been great, too. I think those teams are very even.
Who do you think will give the Eagles more problems? And let's expand that question. I said Detroit and Minnesota, but the Rams, the Eagles beat up on the Rams when they were not very healthy. Green Bay's one of the youngest teams in the league, but they went into Dallas last year and shocked the world and put up 48 points on Dallas. They're a year older. What about Tampa? Todd Bowles has always seemed to have this team's number. Is there one team or a couple of teams that concern you about facing the Eagles?
I'm only concerned about the Eagles because I think if the Eagles play well, they're as good as any team, including Kansas City in the National Football League this year. I don't think there's a better team. The only team that can beat the Eagles is the Eagles. This is how I feel. So it doesn't. I don't care if they play Green Bay or Washington in that first playoff game. Doesn't matter. They're better than both of them, and they can beat. And if they don't play well, they could lose to either one of them. If they play well, there's not a better team in the National Football League.
Hey, going back to Saquon for just a minute. You look at the numbers he's put up, only the 9th player in the history of the NFL to go for 2,000 yards. Should he be the legit MVP front runner? Everybody keeps talking about Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and they've had phenomenal seasons. But, Merrill, I hate the fact that basically this MVP award is a quarterback-driven award. Last running back to win it was Adrian Peterson back in 2012.
Yeah. You're right. It's it used to be that way with the Heisman Trophy.
Oh, my goodness.
But then Devontae Smith won the Heisman Trophy. And this year you had a Heisman Trophy winner who was a wide receiver, a cornerback, both. So I'm prejudiced. I think it should be Saquon Barkley, this guy who ran for 2,000 yards. I think he's the MVP. Yeah. And the crowd chanted, MVP, MVP, MVP.
Yeah.
So he's my MVP, but chances are it will go to Josh Allen, or I think Lamar Jackson had every bit as good a season.
Absolutely. Final question to you, Merrill, getting back to the team in general and the offense specifically for the Eagles. So Jalen Hurts doesn't play. Kenny Pickett comes out. I mean, he's dropping dimes left and right. He re-injures the ribs. Tanner McKee comes in. Kid never played in a real football game in the National Football League before. It looked like he was a 5-year vet. So what is it about this offense that is so quarterback friendly?
Well, it's a quarterback friendly offense because they've got very, very good quarterbacks. And they have a great quarterback coach in Doug Nussmeier, who works well with them, and Kellen Moore, who
Yeah.
draws it up. Don't forget Kellen Moore, when he at Boise State, had a 50-3 record, and he won more games than any college quarterback in history.
Yeah.
Now, in the NFL, he probably wasn't big enough or strong enough or whatever, but he was drafted by Detroit, and then he ended up at Dallas and then became a coach. But he knows the quarterback position well. And also, when you say quarterback friendly, I think it's quarterback friendly anytime you put the quarterback behind the best offensive line in the National Football League and have a running back who truthfully is the best back in football this year.
Yeah. All right. I lied to you. This is my final question. If what you told me earlier in our discussion is true, that the regulars are now playing Sunday against the Giants.
Wait a minute.
What?
I told you what I thought. I told you I believe they had
Okay.
a long time. I believe what's going to happen is the regulars will sit. Almost every significant player will sit, except for Jake Elliott and Braden Mann, the punter and the kicker and the punter. But so don't take that as gospel. So that is Merrill's opinion, not Merrill's report.
Okay, so if what you're saying, if what you're saying and what you believe is true, how do you keep yourself from boredom over 60 minutes of calling basically a preseason game?
Because I know what's coming up next, and that's going to be drama with the playoff game. Also, I have a job, and my job, Derek, and I have always believed this.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say you make a game really exciting. I hope I don't. I hope that what I do is transmit the excitement of a really exciting game, an exciting play. That's my goal. Transmit that. Other than that, my job, I don't care if we're doing a preseason game, a game where the Eagles are trailing 46-2. My job as a broadcaster is to keep a broadcast interesting. So I will have topics that I can just, talk about with Mike Quick.
Yep.
We will look at some of these young players and talk about how they're performing and what I'm anxious to see Tristan McCollum. I'm anxious to see Sidney Brown. I'm anxious to see Jahan Dotson as a lead receiver because I think he's been underused.
Yeah.
I think Jahan Dotson deserves 4 targets a game, and that would take some of the pressure off numbers 11 and 6. I think that little guy, I watched him every game at Penn State. I think he's a terrific player. Yeah. So these are the things I'll be looking for. I'm not faking it, but I promise you, the game may not be exciting, but the broadcast, I hope, will be interesting.
He is the one. He is the only. He is the legendary voice of the Philadelphia Eagles, Merrill Reese. He is my colleague, but more importantly, he is a good friend of mine. And Merrill, I love you to death. Thank you for taking time for Gun on One. And hey, Happy New Year's to you and your blessed family.
Thank you. Same to you, Derek. You're a great guy, and you're a wonderful, wonderful broadcaster.
Thank you, Merrill. Coming from you, it means a lot to me. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of Gun on One. It is powered by the Inside the Birds Network. For my colleague and friend Merrill Reese, I'm Derrick Gunn. Until next week, so long, everybody.